Hey everyone, Token Dave over here. Dorky Token Black Guy who's just trying to get by. And welcome to another edition of AA, Adaptation Application. Here, I share my thoughts on how well an original or an already established story has been adapted into a new or updated medium. And today, I'm going to be talking about how well the comic book character Blade was adapted into the 1998 movie. Spoiler warning. I am going to give away important plot details to the movie Blade, okay? So if you have not seen the movie or if you do care about spoilers, stop this video right now and watch the movie and then come back later. You have been warned. Okay, so here's the thing. People were introduced to Blade by three major ways. One, by the movie. Two, by his appearance in the 1990 Spider-Man cartoon. Or three, directly from the comics. Nowadays, 2 and 3 are more accurate, particularly depending on your age range. If you were born in the early to mid 80s, you probably got introduced to Blade from the Spider-Man cartoon series, I am of course of the latter, and I was introduced to Blade through the comics. This actually was if you've watched some of my videos and if you heard how I knew about Black Panther, or if you watch me on Facebook and I explained how I know about Luke Cage, basically, I initially had my father to thank for that. Sure enough, I had my father to thank for both Blade as well as my uncle, because this was something that they both told me about at the same time. Granted, I was watching Lost Boys when Mama Hawkins was really upset at that, but they both suggested that I should end up reading Tomb of Dracula, to see who Blade is. And I read a couple of comics and I'm like, oh, okay, some guy, I was like, oh, basically, and I said this in the comic book origin, this is Shaft, only a vampire hunter, pretty much, so, yeah, so within this, basically, I forgot about who Blade was, and then I got reintroduced to Blade again, thanks to Ghost Rider within, the comics of the Midnight Suns and the Night Stalkers, but neither here or there. So, when the movie came out, there was really not too much in the comics about Blade. He was big in the 70s. People forgot about him. He came back in the 90s, and he got popular again thanks to the Spider-Man cartoon. And so, they started building a little bit more of Blade, and from what I understand, a lot more detail came out, in the 2000s. But up until 98, basically, I'm going to be talking about pretty much how the character is and some of the characters in the movies. And basically, that's pretty much it. So, I'm going to start off with Blade. Now, in the movie, Blade is a half man, half vampire, whom actually got his powers by basically, his mother, who was pregnant with him, got bit by a vampire, and basically, that bite actually transferred into Blade, giving him, some vampire abilities, and he was actually trained by Whistler, who found him in the streets, as a pre-teenager. And in the movie, Blade is pretty much, a trash-talking, is cold, smart aleck, trash-talking, and very much detached from society. And 99% of that is accurate. That's a 99% accurate portrayal of Blade. The only problem is Blade was not a vampire. In fact, originally in the comics, he was just immune to vampire bites. When Dracula bit him, he couldn't be turned. When, Deacon Frost bit him, which I'll talk about later on, he could not be turned. He became a vampire after the movie, actually, and that was by, of all people, Michael Morbius. A little throwback to the Spider-Man cartoon as well, too. You know? And since Morbius is not a traditional vampire, meaning that he wasn't turned into a vampire by another one, he became a vampire just through an experiment. Morbius's bite was able to transform Blade into a vampire. But that happened like about a year after the movie came out. Other than that, however, they pretty much got Blade pretty much correct, and especially one of his trademark silver sword, I will get into when I talk about Whistler. But let's talk about Deacon Frost. So, Deacon Frost is basically the lead antagonist, and, he is actually he is not a pure blood vampire, which is accurate. He was turned. But, however, Deacon Frost is fairly unique because, the way he was turned, he actually, was experimenting on vampire bats, and one vampire bat he experimented on actually ended up being was a dying vampire. And, when he got bit, he turned into a vampire, but what he's able to do is he's able to bite other people and have them transform into a bit of a doppelganger of Deacon Frost himself. Something that I wish we saw in the movie, but I can understand why that wasn't displayed. But the most important thing that we should note is that it is displayed that the vampire that bit Blade's mother and helped turn him into a half-man, half-vampire was Deacon Frost himself in the movie. But that's also a callback to the comics because we find out that basically in Tomb of Vampire number 13 that it was Deacon Frost who actually, basically bit his mom and killed his mom, So they did that fairly well. In the movies, however, they had it that Blade's mom did die and was turned and is actually Deacon Frost's lover, So, yeah, pretty interesting right there. So that's the whole deal with Deacon Frost. Let's go into Whistler. Now, here's something that's fairly interesting. Whistler was never in the comics. Whistler was actually solely created for the Spider-Man animated series. And then they brought him into the movie. However, when Whistler dies in the movie, it's pretty reminiscent of Blade's mentor in the comics, whose name is Jamal Afri. You see, Blade is actually British, and his mother was a prostitute, and Blade was actually, Deacon Frost bit his mom because Deacon Frost posed as a vampire, as a doctor, and all, and basically, Blade grew up in the brothel with the other women looking after him and protecting him and raising him. And one night, walking in the street, he actually sees that Jamal Afri is being attacked by 3 guys, but it's not 3 guys, it's actually 3 vampires. And Blade jumps in to fight them off, and, Jamal displays that he's able to hold his own against the vampires, and he actually kills a few of them with a silver sword that he had hidden in his cane. And that's the significance of the sword that Blade carries around, because that is actually, a callback to Jamal Afri. However, Jamal Afri, did trade and raise Blade for a little bit until he fought Dracula, and he was bitten by Dracula and turned into a vampire, forcing Blade to actually kill Jamal, and basically this is why Blade appears and is gunning for Dracula in, his first appearance, to avenge Jamal, because Jamal was the only thing he had that will resemble the father to Blade, So pretty much these are basically this is basically how everything relates to the movie Blade itself. And what's my verdict of this adaptation? Actually, this adaptation's on point. Keep in mind that by this time, there wasn't too much into the Blade character. There was a lot that they were able to basically work with, make their own, and improve on. And they did that extremely well with this movie. They got a lot of the mythos right, and all the changes they made were for the better. Agree? Disagree? Please drop me a comment below, give me a like, follow me on Facebook at Token Dave or on Twitter at Token Dave 80. Subscribe, ring that bell so you know when a new video loads, and spread this video out, everyone. But until then, this has been Token Dave, dorky token black guy who's just trying to get by, and I'll catch all of you later.